Okay, my name is Eugene Youngblood. Wow, I'm very tall, about 6'4". Uh, I'm African American. I'm 45 years old. I don't know, I guess that's about it.
How many years have you been in prison so far?
27 years.
Do you have a release date?
Yes, it's 2049.
So-
So I have one, but it's very far extended, even past my expectation of release. So even I said the expectation of release beyond my life expectancy. Okay, so the ironic thing of it all is that as a young person coming to prison, I came when I was 18 years old. I was caught up in the instruction of prison, right? And so in doing all that, I went to Walla Walla, which is a really hard prison, and there was a lot of guys there with a lot of time, and it wasn't that many young people. So I was just trying to do everything I could to fit in. So it probably took me a couple of years to realize how much time I had. I was so caught up in still living the life that I was living on the street. And so what happened to me was I was living like what I would call a fantasy world. And what happened is I'm living on the street and I'm involved in these activities. I was a gang member, I'm involved in gang activities. And so what happened was I was basically living a fantasy life. And so I had to one day wake up and deal with the reality that living that fantasy life put me in. And I came to the realization that here I am and I have all this time to do. I don't know if it was something that happened to me. Just one day, I came to the realization that I was getting older, but I wasn't really growing up. I wasn't really learning nothing or anything. I just was getting older. I don't know if I want to tell you that something in me changed or if I just grew up and became who I was meant to be. So I don't know if it's better to say that something old in me died or something new in me was born. Okay, so I've been involved in a lot of programs, but then programs I'm most seriously involved in here is I'm involved in the Black Prisoners Caucus. I'm involved in the Concerned Lifers organization. And then I teach a class called Roots of Success, which is an environmental literacy course that's run here as well. And it's part of the Sustainability in Prisons program. And we have a whole sustainable practice lab out here, and we do wheelchairs, we refurbish wheelchairs, we do bicycles, they do woodwork to donate to women and children who are in shelters, and we have a worm farm, all in the same building. So all of that stuff is encompassed around in the area that my class is also located, so that I can teach environmental literacy. It's more than that, it's an environmental literacy and kind of work readiness program to kind of get you ready to go outside or to help you understand how to deal better with understanding your impact on the environment and your environment's impact on you.
Is that stuff you had any interest in before?
No, not at all. Not at all. As a young man, I didn't have no context to me being connected to the earth or the environment at all. I just thought it was a place that was here, right? For me, I didn't understand the old concept is the people who drink the water should always remember the people who dug the well. And as a young man, I didn't know anything like that. Like I didn't have appreciation for that. So I just lived and did things the wrong way, not only towards my environment, but more importantly towards people as well. And as I got older, some things came to me that happened because I changed the way I was living in prison. Associate superintendent at another prison I was at recommended me to be trained in that program so that I could put forth that information because she felt like it was a good program for me to be a part of. So physically what it's like to be aging in prison is you come to the realization, more for me, I'm just kind of noticing it now at 45, but I get to see my peers, meaning not guys who are my age, but guys who I've been in prison with this long. So when I came, like I said, I was really young at 18. There weren't very many young people in prison. So the guys who came to prison when I came were 25, 30. So they're 12 years older than me, 7 years older than me. So now they're 52 or they're 67, they're 60, whatever. And what happens is now I can see them and the troubles that they're having, especially at a place like this. They can't get up and down the steps very easy, or their own medication because their bodies are breaking down, or because they got diabetes, or they got high blood pressure, or other things like that are really kicking in that are just more a symptom of, I guess, the world is happening more in the world, but I think it's just, it happens a lot in prison as well because prison is so much smaller. When you talk about really getting older, the worst part is that, so when you're doing time in prison, what happens a lot of times is you're kind of out of sight, out of mind, and people forget about you. So not only do you not have the love and care of your family, but you're in a situation like prison where the people who are charged to watch you or look out for you, look over you, are not really there to, for lack of a better term, to really be nice or tender, caring with you, right? And so we understand that, but it still makes it harder as you grow older and you become infirm. And then the population of prison is not a place where people should be growing older and stuff. You see guys here who, had their hips replaced and stuff like that. And if you see, my room is not much bigger than I am. Like, I can stand up and hold my arms across to both walls, and I have to duck to go under the thing to get in. So you can imagine what that's gonna feel like when I become 60 or older. I began to realize that, hey, I have to start making better choices about some of the things I eat, some of the things I do, because I need to have longevity in a healthy way. Like, I don't just want to be here and look okay physically. I want to be here and be okay emotionally as well, right? So I had to start doing things in a different way because I started to understand what it meant to deal with depression and deal with stuff like that. And then the stigma that's around mental health, then sometimes it's a problem to want to even go and talk to people in mental health and deal with stuff like that, because there's a, just like in society, I would assume, there's still that stigma attached to things like that. And the same is in here. But mostly it's the physical stuff as far as the aging and stuff, and about, just the mattresses we sleep on are really bad. The bed obviously is metal. Everything we sit on is solid, hard metal, or maybe got this much padding on it. And so you realize as you get older, these things are going to become a real problem. So there's an apprehension that sits in, a fear, if you will.
How's that chair feeling?
Very hard, very hard. Look at,
Yeah.
look at, what is that, maybe an inch, maybe 8 centimeters or something thick pad, but so yeah, no. It's not built for comfort at all. And in saying that, to be honest, I guess there's a part of me that says, nor should it be, right? And so this is part and parcel of committing a crime against society and having to pay for it. But in understanding that, one of the buzzwords you hear in prison now is about accountability, and everybody wants you to be accountable, and you should be. You should be accountable for the harm that you've caused to people. You should be accountable for the things that you have done, right? But in that saying that too, you should also be accountable for what prison does to you. This is why being involved in programs and stuff are important, because that's also my way of being accountable that prison does something good for me as opposed to something bad, and that I find a way to make something better out of it. Okay, so how I would describe it is, people usually look at it from two perspectives. They look at it as a fiscal responsibility, because it's obvious that you probably want to take that money that's being spent on an older person who's no longer poses the kind of physical threat that society wants to be away from and needs to be away from, right? And should be protected from. So a person that no longer poses that threat, right? You're still spending thousands and thousands of dollars on that one person who we know is no longer that same threat, when those dollars, that monies could be spent towards younger people who really need the help in terms of classes and work and stuff like that, programs to help guide them and teach them and get them going in the right direction. So people look at it that way. The other way that usually people look at it is from just a simple sympathy point of perspective, and just saying, hey, this guy, he's older, he's been here 40 years, he's 65 years old, or what have you. And so holding him here, we understand that there's a punitive part of corrections, but at what point does that run out? Like, at what point is enough, right? And so people usually look at it from either one of those two sides. I kind of take a stance that's in the middle, that we want to make sure that the money is being spent in the proper way, and that's what's important to society, right? Is that not just that society doesn't want people here just doing time, right? Society would like for people to be here learning, growing, becoming better people, right? Mature, understanding where they went wrong so that they can correct their behavior. And so I don't think that society would like for people just to sit here and grow old and, you know, not do anything to better themselves. But what happens a lot of times, because of the way that corrections is that it's built in a way that they just want to make sure that you have good behavior, and that's like the end all be all. When the end all be all should be whether or not you're becoming a better person, right? As opposed to just whether or not you're having good behavior. Okay. So,
why do people care about it?
Okay, so I think that it should be important to society, and I think a lot of people should really care about it, because the majority of the prison population is either there or getting there. And so there's not a lot we can really do for people who are there right now, but we can try to put something in place that will kind of subside things from getting worse in the future. Because I couldn't tell you the data points about how much money is being spent on medications or how much more it costs for elderly prisoners, but it's close to twice as much for younger people. And so what happens is guys like me who are 45, we're gonna be the ones who are gonna be getting older. So at 65 it will be, and even the guys that's 30 who got 50 years left to do or a life sentence left to do, those guys are gonna get older. And so while it's kind of too late to help guys who are really old with just this right here, the impact is for future cost and future gain, and to make sure not that we fix what's happening right now, but so that it doesn't get worse in the future. I think what's really important is that people understand, and you're doing a good job of it right here about talking to people and getting people's understanding, is that there needs to be a better understanding between people who are free and people who are in prison, because what happens is a lot of times they lock them up and throw away the key philosophy that we're kind of under right now. What happens is people really do forget about you, right? Including society. And so what has to happen is you need to realize that a lot of these guys are gonna come out, or a lot of these guys should come out, and that the way people are treated often has a lot to do with how they act. And so we need to make sure that people are treated still humanely, and we know that the object of corrections isn't to necessarily punish you, it's to keep you here and to make sure you act right while you're here and to help you get corrections so that you can get out. And one of the chief things is to build an environment that is conducive to you really helping yourself. And that's really where the help that we're asking for is to help us help ourselves, right? And so we're hoping that this kind of bill can do that kind of stuff, and that this kind of information can help people out, not just on the tragedy that it is that old people are here and gonna die here or gonna become infirmed here. Not that, it's that what happens is over time that the money is better spent on the young people, and that we understand that at some point in time, when is enough, in terms of, does this guy really pose the same threat that he did 30 years ago, 40 years ago, or what have you? And those things need to be taken obviously on a case-by-case basis, person-by-person basis, because we're not talking about, I think people hear about legislation, and one thing they get confused, they think that we're talking about open the door and just let everybody out. And that's not the situation. We're saying that people should have a process for review, which means that somebody in authority, right, has the opportunity to look at it and then decide whether this person is or should be able to make a release or not. And not that this automatically means guys need to automatically walk out. That's not what we're saying, because the reason why review is so important is because as it stands right now with no review for anybody, right? Well, for only a few subjects or people. But what happens is you just do until your release date comes up and then they let you go, right? But in a review type situation, what happens is not only is the situation where you end up letting the right people out, unfortunately, it's also set up like so you can keep the right people in. And people don't remember that. They just automatically think you're talking about open the door and letting everybody out. And I don't think nobody wants that, you know, if we're to be honest. And people that are honest with themselves and people that come to an understanding about life understand not only that you did wrong and not only that you harmed an individual person, but that you did a harm to society as a whole, right? And so there's an issue there that you have to try to make some kind of recompense for that, right? And you can try to by becoming a better person, but really the best way you can do that is by helping other people not to be there. Because it's not good enough for me to say that I'm not gonna hurt anybody else. The best thing that I can do is say now I'm gonna help somebody else. Right? And so unfortunately in life, we need people who have been through tragedy to kind of help us understand what that means. So not simply so that they don't go through it, but also so that they can learn some of the hard lessons without having to necessarily go through it their own self. And so I would kind of be there to explain and express what my plight was, what happened, the foundation of the reason why things went wrong for me and so on, and to help people, particularly young people, because while it's great that we're trying to help old people, I think more importantly, we got to help young people before they get old, right? And so prevention is worth more than anything else, right, than intervention. And so I think that that's a perspective that I would bring to try to help people understand the value of that. Because to be honest, more people are in prison simply because they have low self-esteem. Contrary to popular belief, money is not the root of all evil. It's truly poor self-esteem. And so just about every person that's here in prison, irrespective of what crime they committed, the reason why they were willing to commit that crime is because they felt really poor about themselves and really bad about who they were. Because think about it like this. If I felt really good about the person I am, if I felt really high, had really high esteem about who I am, and I knew my self-worth, how could I rob anybody? How could I kill anybody? How could I even sell anybody any drugs? Because I feel so good about myself and I really understand my worth that not only do I know I don't want to harm anybody else, but I would know that I'm worth more than that. And so when people are willing to put their life on the line for crime, it's mostly just because they don't understand their self-worth. And so one of the things I would bring to them is try to help them understand how important that is. This is not something that should be taken lightly. And the fact that they were willing to do it and take you through whatever security scrutiny that they were willing to do, they didn't have to do that, right? And they did. And so that shows me and that shows the population that there's an opportunity for us to kind of meet on some kind of common ground, right? And so then we understand that we're kind of breaking down the wall of us versus them because they don't want that and we don't want that either. And so this for me is even more than just an opportunity for me to talk to you or an opportunity to talk on the camera. It's also a part for me to sit here and show them, show her through this that people are caring and thinking people on the cusp of change, and that these are things that we can do, other type of things in the future that can bring us together, right?